What if I told you your own sister could steal $47,000 from you and your parents would take her side? Before you click away thinking this could never happen to you, consider this. 83% of Americans experience financial stress from family members. And I was about to become living proof that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. My name is Madison Cooper, and for 18 months, I funded my sister's luxury lifestyle while slowly going broke myself. But when I got sick and needed that money back, my entire family turned their backs on me. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family forever. By the end of this story, you'll know exactly how to protect yourself from family financial parasites, because the warning signs I missed could save you from losing everything like I almost did. It started innocently enough. I was 28, working as a software engineer in Seattle, pulling in a decent six-figure salary. My older sister Emily had always been the golden child, the creative one, the free spirit, the one who marched to her own drum, while I was just the practical, boring one who had it all figured out. Emily was 32 and still chasing her dreams as an actress in Los Angeles. Our parents constantly reminded me how lucky I was to have a stable job, how I should be grateful for my success, and how family takes care of family. "You're the successful one, Madison," my mom would say during our weekly calls. "Emily's struggling, but she's following her passion. You should be proud to help when you can." And I was, at least I thought I was. The first time Emily called asking for money, I was working late on a particularly difficult coding project. My phone buzzed with a text at 11 p.m. "Mad, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm in a really bad spot. My landlord is threatening to evict me, and I'm short $800 for rent. I know it's a lot to ask, but could you help? I'll pay you back as soon as I book this commercial I auditioned for." $800. It stung a little, but it wasn't going to break me. I'd been saving aggressively, building up what I thought was a solid emergency fund. Emily was family. You help family. I sent the money that night. 2 weeks later, she called crying. "Madison, I'm so embarrassed, but the commercial fell through. I'll get you the money back, I swear. But right now I need to get my car fixed, or I can't make it to auditions. It's only $600. 600 became 1,000. 1,000 became 1,500. Each time, Emily had a perfectly reasonable explanation. Each time, she promised to pay me back as soon as things turned around. Each time, our parents reminded me how blessed I was to be in a position to help. But here's what I didn't see then, what I was too conditioned by 18 years of family dynamics to recognize. Emily's emergencies had a pattern. They always happened right after my payday. They always had urgent deadlines, and they always came with just enough emotional manipulation to make me feel guilty for even hesitating. "I know you work so hard for your money," she'd say, her voice breaking just slightly. "I feel terrible asking. I just don't know who else to turn to. Mom and Dad are already doing so much, and you're the only one who really understands what it's like to be independent." The praise felt good. Being needed felt good. Being the successful sister who could swoop in and save the day felt good. What I didn't realize was that I was being systematically programmed to equate my worth with how much I could give. Month by month, the requests escalated. $2,000 for a career opportunity. some acting workshop that would change everything. $3,000 for medical bills when she didn't have insurance. $5,000 for what she called her big break. Moving to a better apartment in a part of LA where real industry people lived. I started putting my own life on hold. The vacation to Europe I'd been planning got canceled. The down payment I was saving for a condo got depleted. My retirement contributions dropped to the minimum company match. But Emily was family, and family comes first, right? The worst part wasn't the money disappearing from my account. The worst part was how normal it had become. How I'd check my phone after every Emily conversation, already knowing there'd be a Venmo request waiting. How I'd started budgeting for her crises before my own goals. How I'd lie awake at night doing mental math, figuring out how much more I could spare. 18 months in, I'd given my sister $47,000. $47,000 that was supposed to be my safety net. $47,000 that represented 2 years of careful saving, of saying no to things I wanted, of planning for my future. All gone, funneled into Emily's temporary situations that never seemed to get better, but the money was just the beginning. What happened next showed me exactly how deep the manipulation went. My parents loved Emily's regular updates about her progress in LA, how she was networking, how she was getting better roles, how she was so close to her big break. They'd share these updates with me proudly, as if I should be thrilled to hear how well my investment was paying off. Emily's doing so well, Mom would gush during our Sunday calls. She's got that acting class with the teacher who worked with Jennifer Lawrence, and she's been going to all these industry events. She says she feels more confident than ever about her career. Acting classes, industry events. I was paying for Emily to live her dream while I was living like a broke college student again, eating ramen and avoiding social activities I couldn't afford. But I couldn't complain. Every time I expressed even mild concern about the money, I was met with a wall of family loyalty rhetoric. "Madison, honey," Dad would say in that disappointed tone. "Your sister is trying to build something meaningful. She's not asking for handouts. She's asking for investment in her future. Isn't that what family does?" The gaslighting was so subtle, I didn't even recognize it. My concerns about money were reframed as lack of faith in Emily's dreams. My desire to rebuild my own savings was painted as selfishness. My growing financial stress was dismissed as good problems to have because I was lucky enough to have a stable job. I was trapped in a family system where my role was to give, and Emily's role was to receive, and questioning that system made me the villain. Looking back, there were warning signs everywhere. Emily's designer bags that somehow appeared between crises, her Instagram posts from expensive restaurants, carefully cropped to hide the check, but showing the tableside guacamole that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Her casual mentions of networking events that sounded suspiciously like expensive parties, but I was conditioned to ignore my instincts. Good sisters don't keep track. Good sisters don't ask uncomfortable questions. Good sisters certainly don't demand receipts or timelines for payback. I was living in a fantasy where my sacrifice was noble and Emily's eventual success would vindicate everything, where my parents' approval of my generosity meant more than my own financial security, where being needed felt better than being stable. That fantasy was about to come crashing down in the most brutal way possible. It was a Tuesday morning in October when everything changed. I was debugging code at my desk, 3 cups of coffee, deep and running on about 4 hours of sleep, when the world started spinning. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed with my coworker Marcus Chen sitting beside me, looking more worried than I'd ever seen him. "Madison, thank God you're awake," Marcus said, leaning forward. "You collapsed at your desk. They brought you here in an ambulance." The doctor came in an hour later with results that turned my world upside down. Severe anemia. My iron levels were dangerously low, explaining the exhaustion I'd been attributing to work stress, the dizziness I'd been ignoring, the way I'd been feeling run down for months. "This didn't happen overnight," Dr. Rodriguez explained, pulling up my blood work on her tablet. "This is chronic, likely from poor nutrition and stress. Have you been eating regularly? Getting enough sleep? This level of anemia suggests your body has been running on empty for quite some time." Poor nutrition. I'd been living on cereal and instant noodles for months, telling myself I was being financially responsible, while secretly knowing I couldn't afford groceries because I'd spent my food budget on Emily's latest emergency. The treatment plan was extensive. Iron infusions, dietary changes, follow-up appointments every 2 weeks for the next 3 months. With my insurance deductible, I was looking at $5,000 in medical bills. $5,000 I didn't have because I'd given it all to my sister. Sitting in that hospital bed, I felt something I'd never experienced before. The crushing weight of having prioritized everyone else's needs above my own basic health. I'd literally made myself sick trying to fund Emily's dreams. My first call was to my parents. Surely when they heard I was hospitalized, when they understood that their constant pressure to help Emily had left me unable to care for myself, they'd see how wrong this had all been. "Oh, honey," Mom said, her voice full of concern. "That's so scary. Are you going to be okay?" "I think so, but I need to start treatment right away, and it's expensive. I don't have the money because—" "Well, can't you ask work for an advance? Or maybe use a credit card. I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're so good at managing money." There it was. Even when I was literally in a hospital bed, because of the financial stress they'd encouraged, I was still expected to figure it out alone. I tried calling Emily next, thinking surely she'd want to know her sister was sick, that maybe this would be the wake-up call that made her realize how much I'd sacrificed. "Oh no, Madison, that's awful. Are you feeling better?" Emily's voice was appropriately concerned, but something felt off. "I'm going to be okay, but the treatment is expensive and I'm going to need—" "I wish I could help, but you know how tight things are for me right now. Maybe you could ask Mom and Dad, or see if work has some kind of emergency fund." The same sister who'd had no problem asking me for thousands of dollars, dozens of times, couldn't even offer $50 when I was hospitalized. That night, lying in my hospital bed, I did something I'd never done before. I opened Emily's Instagram account and really looked at it. Not just the quick scroll I usually did, but a deep dive through the last few months of posts. The first photo made my blood run cold. It was from 3 days ago. 3 days ago, while I was probably already anemic and exhausted, working overtime to afford her lifestyle. Emily was holding a Hermès bag, grinning at the camera with the caption, "Treated myself to an early birthday present. Sometimes you have to invest in yourself. Self-love tot you're blessed. And treat yourself. A Hermès bag." The same week she'd asked me for $2,000 for rent. I scrolled further, screenshotting everything with shaking hands. Dinner at Nobu. The same night she'd texted me about not being able to afford groceries. A weekend trip to Napa Valley, right after she'd borrowed $1,500 for car repairs. Designer shoes, expensive workout classes, bottles of wine that cost more than my weekly food budget. But the caption that broke me was from a month ago. Living my absolute best life. So grateful for all the opportunities coming my way. When you bet on yourself, the universe bets on you too. Grateful, blessed, living the dream. The universe wasn't betting on her. I was. With money I didn't have, for medical care I couldn't afford, while she lived like a wealthy socialite on my dime. Marcus found me the next morning, still scrolling through screenshots, my laptop open to 18 months of bank statements. I'd spent the entire night documenting every transfer to Emily and cross-referencing it with her social media posts. "Madison, you look like you haven't slept. What's going on?" I showed him everything. The pattern of requests and luxury purchases, the family pressure and emotional manipulation, the $47,000 that had vanished into designer bags and expensive dinners while I was slowly starving myself sick. Marcus stared at the evidence for a long time before speaking. "Madison, this isn't just family drama. This is financial abuse." Financial abuse. I'd never heard the term applied to family relationships, but hearing it out loud made something click into place. The systematic draining of my resources, the emotional manipulation when I hesitated, the way questioning the arrangement made me the bad guy. "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked. For the first time in 18 months, I knew exactly what I was going to do. "I'm going to get my life back," I said, closing Emily's Instagram account. "And she's going to learn that being family doesn't mean you get to destroy someone who loves you." Marcus nodded slowly. "You're going to need help with this. Family dynamics are complicated, especially when money's involved. They're going to push back hard when you set boundaries." He was right. I'd been conditioned to be the family ATM for so long that changing the dynamic would feel like betrayal to everyone involved. But sitting in that hospital bed, looking at the evidence of how Emily had been living while I made myself sick, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Anger. Clean, clear, justified anger. "Will you help me?" I asked Marcus. "I need someone in my corner who isn't invested in keeping me small." "Absolutely," he said without hesitation. "Let's start by documenting everything properly. If you're going to confront them, you need to be prepared for every possible reaction." Over the next week, while I recovered at home, Marcus and I built an airtight case. We organized bank statements chronologically, cross-referenced every Emily expense with her social media posts, and created a timeline that showed exactly how she'd been using my money. The pattern was undeniable. Within 48 hours of every transfer I made to Emily, she'd posted evidence of luxury purchases or experiences. The rent emergency money had bought a designer purse. The medical emergency funds had paid for a weekend in wine country. The career investment cash had gone to a shopping spree that included shoes worth more than I spent on food in a month. We also researched family financial abuse, learning about manipulation tactics I recognized immediately. Love bombing, the excessive praise about being successful and generous. Gaslighting, reframing my concerns as character flaws. Triangulation, using our parents to pressure me when I hesitated. "This is textbook," Marcus said, showing me articles about financial exploitation within families. The crazy thing is how normalized it becomes. You start thinking it's normal to sacrifice your health and future for someone else's lifestyle. But knowledge wasn't enough. I needed a strategy for confronting a family system that had been built around my compliance. "They're not going to admit wrongdoing," Marcus warned. "Emily's going to deny everything. Your parents are going to minimize it, and they're all going to make you feel like you're being dramatic for wanting your money back." So what do? You document the conversation. You stay calm and factual. You present the evidence without emotion. And you prepare for the fact that they might choose Emily's comfort over your well-being again. The thought terrified me, but it also clarified something important. If my family would rather protect Emily's luxury lifestyle than acknowledge the damage done to my health and finances, then they weren't really my family at all. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had been a tradition for as long as I could remember. This Sunday would be different. Sunday dinner at my parents' house in Bellevue felt different this time. I sat in the passenger seat of Marcus's car, a manila folder on my lap containing 18 months of evidence. Bank statements, screenshots, a detailed timeline that would expose exactly how Emily had been living while I slowly made myself sick. "You sure you're ready for this?" Marcus asked as we pulled into the familiar driveway. "I have to be," I said, watching Emily's BMW in the driveway, the same car she'd claimed needed emergency repairs 3 months ago. "I can't keep living this lie." My parents greeted Marcus warmly. They'd met him a few times at work events and always liked him. Emily was already at the dinner table, looking radiant in what I now recognized as a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Madison, you look so much better," Mom said, hugging me. "We were so worried about you fainting like that." "Thanks, Mom. Actually, that's part of what I wanted to talk to everyone about tonight." We sat down to Mom's famous pot roast, the same meal she'd been making for Sunday dinners since I was 12. Emily dominated the conversation as usual, talking about her latest auditions, her networking successes, her growing confidence in LA. "I feel like everything is finally clicking," she said, gesturing with her wine glass. "I've been taking these amazing classes, meeting all the right people. I think this is really my year." I listened to her talk about the life I'd been funding while eating ramen for dinner, and felt that clean anger crystallize into determination. "Emily," I said during a pause in her monologue, "I'm curious about something. You said you've been struggling financially, but I noticed some things on your social media that seem expensive, like that Hermès bag from last week." The table went quiet. Emily's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Oh, that? I got it second-hand. It was actually a really good deal." "For $3,000? I asked, pulling out my phone. "Because that's what the boutique charges for that exact model. And you posted it with the tag still on." "Madison, what's this about?" Dad asked, his voice carrying a warning tone I knew well. I opened the manila folder and spread the contents across the table. Bank statements highlighted in yellow showing every transfer to Emily. Screenshots of her Instagram posts time-stamped within days of each transfer. A detailed timeline showing the pattern. "This is about $47,000, I said, keeping my voice steady. $47,000 I gave Emily for emergencies that turned out to be designer shopping sprees. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Emily's face had gone pale, but she quickly shifted into defensive mode. Madison, this is really inappropriate. Those are private family matters, and you're making it sound like something it's not. Then help me understand what it is, I said, pointing to a particularly damning example. On March 15th, you asked me for $1,500 because your car broke down and you couldn't get to auditions. 2 days later, you posted pictures from a weekend spa retreat in Monterey. How does that work? Those were completely separate things. I had been planning that trip for months, and I used points. Emily. My voice was sharper now. I have 18 months of this. Every single time you asked me for emergency money, you spent the exact same amount on luxury items within 48 hours. I spread out more evidence. The medical emergency that became a shopping haul. The rent crisis that turned into expensive dinners. The career opportunity that funded a designer wardrobe. I don't understand why you're attacking Emily like this, Mom said, her voice tight with disapproval. She's been working so hard and you've been generous enough to help. Why are you making it sound so ugly? Because I ended up in the hospital, Mom, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I collapsed at work because I was malnourished and anemic. I've been living on cereal and ramen for months, because every time I tried to rebuild my savings, Emily had another emergency. That's not my fault, Emily burst out. You never told me you were struggling. If you couldn't afford to help, you should have said something. The gaslighting was so smooth, so immediate, that for a second I almost fell for it. Almost started apologizing for not communicating better, for not managing my money better, for not being clearer about my limits. But Marcus reached over and squeezed my hand under the table, grounding me. Emily, I said slowly, you never asked if I could afford it. You never asked about paying it back. You just assumed I would keep funding your lifestyle forever. Lifestyle? Emily's voice pitched higher. I'm pursuing my dreams. I'm trying to build a career. I can't help that it's expensive to make it in LA. Then get a job, I said simply, like everyone else. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Madison Cooper, Dad said in the voice that used to terrify me as a child. That's enough. Emily is family. We help family. Where was family when I was in the hospital? I asked. Where was Emily's help when I needed $5,000 for medical treatment? The same Emily who spent $5,000 on a purse last month? That's different, Mom said. You have a stable job, insurance. Insurance with a $5,000 deductible that I couldn't meet because I'd given Emily $5,000 2 weeks earlier. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, my medical bills alongside Emily's social media posts from the same time period. While I was getting blood work done to diagnose my anemia, Emily was posting pictures from a wine tasting in Sonoma. You were literally living it up while I was getting sicker and sicker from the stress of funding your dreams, I said. Emily started crying then, the perfect tears that had always worked on our parents. I never meant for any of this to happen, she sobbed. I thought you wanted to help. I thought you believed in me. I never knew you were keeping track of every penny, making me feel like some kind of criminal for accepting help from my own sister. And there it was, the manipulation in real time. My legitimate concerns about being financially abused were reframed as me being petty and unsupportive. My evidence of her deception was painted as me being controlling and mean. Emily, Marcus said quietly, speaking for the first time since we'd sat down. Madison almost died because she prioritized your comfort over her own health. The question isn't whether she wanted to help. The question is why you let her. Who asked you? Emily snapped, her tears drying instantly. This is a family matter. Marcus is here because he's the one who found me unconscious at my desk, I said. He's the one who stayed with me at the hospital while you were posting Instagram stories from expensive restaurants. He's the one helping me rebuild my life because my actual family was too busy enabling your spending addiction. Madison, that's harsh, Mom said. Emily didn't know how serious things were for you. She didn't want to know, I replied, because knowing would have meant admitting that her emergencies weren't emergencies at all. Dad leaned back in his chair, studying the evidence spread across the table. For a moment, I thought he might actually see it, the clear pattern of manipulation and abuse. Instead, he sighed and looked at me with disappointment. Madison, I understand you're upset about your health scare, and I'm sorry that happened. But keeping detailed records of money you gave freely to your sister, presenting it like some kind of criminal case, this isn't who you are. You're right, I said, standing up and gathering my papers. The Madison who gave freely while being systematically lied to isn't who I am anymore. Where are you going? Mom asked. Home, to my apartment that I can barely afford because I've been paying for Emily's lifestyle. To my empty refrigerator because I've been buying her designer purses instead of groceries. To my stack of medical bills because I chose her comfort over my own health. Madison, don't be so dramatic, Emily said, her tears completely gone now. Just because you have buyer's remorse about helping family doesn't mean you get to rewrite history and make me the villain. That stopped me cold. Buyer's remorse. As if lending money to family during emergencies was a transaction I should have researched better. You know what, Emily? You're right. I do have buyer's remorse. I regret every single dollar I gave you. But not because you didn't pay me back, because you never intended to. Not because you spent it on luxuries, because you lied about what you needed it for. I regret it because I enabled someone I love to become a person who could watch her sister slowly destroy herself and ask for more money. I looked around the table at my parents, both of whom were looking at me like I'd committed some unforgivable sin by wanting accountability. I'm done, I said simply. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done being blamed for Emily's choices. I'm done pretending that being related to someone gives them the right to lie to me and steal from me. Madison, you're overreacting, Dad said. Emily made some poor choices, but calling it stealing. What would you call taking money under false pretenses? I asked. What would you call asking for rent money and spending it on purses? What would you call letting someone make themselves sick, trying to fund your lies? Silence. I thought so, I said. Marcus, can we go? As we reached the front door, Mom called after me. Madison, you're going to regret this. Family is forever. Emily loves you and you love her. Don't let money come between you. I turned back one last time. Mom, I almost died because I put Emily's fake emergencies before my own real health needs. The money isn't what came between us. Her lies did. The drive home was quiet. Marcus didn't push me to talk, just let me process what had just happened. My family had chosen Emily's comfort over my well-being, even when presented with undeniable evidence of her deception. How do you feel? Marcus finally asked as we pulled into my apartment complex. Free, I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. Angry, hurt, disappointed, but free. Over the next few days, the family campaign began exactly as Marcus had predicted. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from relatives I rarely heard from, all delivering variations of the same message. Emily was devastated. I was being too hard on her. Family should forgive and forget. Money wasn't worth destroying relationships over. The flying monkeys, as I learned to call them. But something interesting happened too. 3 of my cousins reached out privately, sharing their own Emily stories. How she'd borrowed money from them and never paid it back. How she'd manipulated family gatherings to get what she wanted. How they'd been afraid to speak up because Emily was the golden child and they didn't want to cause family drama. My aunt called Wednesday night with a bombshell. Madison, I probably should have said something years ago, but Emily stole money from your grandmother's purse at Christmas 3 years ago. We caught her on the security camera, but your mother begged us not to say anything because it would ruin the holidays. The pattern went back years. I wasn't Emily's first victim. I was just her most successful one. Meanwhile, Emily was having her own reckoning. Without my financial backing, her house of cards was collapsing quickly. The expensive LA apartment she couldn't actually afford. The credit cards she'd been making minimum payments on with my money. The lifestyle she'd been maintaining through lies and manipulation. Marcus helped me set up a GoFundMe for my medical expenses, and I was amazed by the response. Co-workers, friends, even some extended family members contributed. Within a week, we'd raised $12,000, more than enough to cover my treatment and start rebuilding my emergency fund. People want to help when you're honest about what you need, Marcus pointed out as we watched the donations come in. Emily could have tried this instead of lying to you, but Emily's method had never been about meeting genuine needs. It had been about maintaining a fantasy lifestyle funded by someone else's sacrifice. As my health improved with proper treatment, other parts of my life began flourishing too. Without the constant stress of Emily's financial crises, my work performance improved dramatically. I got promoted to senior engineer with a significant salary increase. My relationship with Marcus deepened as he continued to be the steady, honest presence my family had never been. Most importantly, I was learning what healthy boundaries looked like. Emily tried various approaches to resume the old dynamic. Tearful voicemails about missing me, angry texts about how I was being selfish and cruel, manipulative messages through our parents about family events I was choosing not to attend. I blocked her on all platforms and returned her mail unopened. The decision felt harsh, but every time I wavered, I remembered the Hermès bag she bought with my rent emergency money while I was eating cereal for dinner. My parents attempted several reconciliation conversations, always framed around my need to forgive and Emily's need for support. They never once acknowledged the damage that had been done to my health and finances. They never asked how I was doing or what I needed to heal. "We just want our family back together," Mom said during one particularly painful phone call. "Then Emily needs to acknowledge what she did and make amends," I replied. "Real amends, not just apologies designed to get me giving again." "You're asking her to grovel." "I'm asking her to take responsibility." That was 6 months ago. Emily moved back to Seattle when she could no longer afford LA, living with our parents again. According to family gossip, she'd gotten a part-time retail job but was still pursuing acting opportunities. I learned this from Marcus's sister, who worked at the mall where Emily was employed. She'd tried to convince her manager that she deserved flexible scheduling for auditions, despite having been there less than 2 weeks. Some things never change, but other things do. I built an emergency fund larger than ever before. I bought the condo I'd been dreaming about. I took the European vacation I'd postponed to fund Emily's lifestyle. Most importantly, I learned to value my own well-being as much as anyone else's comfort. Marcus and I moved in together last month, and I'm learning what it feels like to be in a relationship with someone who actually cares about my needs, not just what I can provide. "Do you ever regret cutting Emily off?" he asked one evening as we cooked dinner together in our new kitchen. I considered the question seriously. Did I miss the sister I'd thought Emily was? Yes. Did I regret ending the dynamic that nearly killed me? Never. I regret that it took me 18 months and a hospital visit to recognize financial abuse, I said. I regret that I valued being needed more than being respected. I regret that I let family loyalty override my own well-being for so long. But cutting her off? That saved my life. 3 weeks ago, I got a letter that Emily had somehow gotten past my mail filters. Inside was a generic apology about mistakes were made and a request to rebuild our relationship, along with a casual mention of her struggling with rent again. I threw it away without reading it twice. Yesterday, I sent a check to a domestic violence shelter that provides financial counseling to abuse survivors. In the memo line, I wrote, "For economic empowerment programs." It felt like the best possible use of money Emily would have otherwise taken. The hardest lesson I learned wasn't about money or even about Emily. It was about family. I grew up believing that family meant unconditional support, that blood relationships were sacred, that love meant sacrifice. But real family, chosen family, healthy family, doesn't drain you. It doesn't lie to you. It doesn't prioritize one person's comfort over another person's survival. Real family celebrates your boundaries instead of trampling them. Real family asks what you need instead of assuming what you can give. Real family would never let you make yourself sick trying to fund their dreams. I found my real family in Marcus, who stayed with me in the hospital, in coworkers who contributed to my medical fund without expecting anything back, in cousins who finally felt safe enough to share their own Emily stories, in friends who supported my decision to prioritize my own well-being. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my story, if someone in your life is systematically draining your resources while living luxuriously, if family members pressure you to keep giving while your own needs go unmet, if you're being told that accountability equals selfishness, please know that you deserve better. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not what you can provide. You deserve honesty in your relationships. You deserve to prioritize your own health and future. And you definitely deserve to keep your hard-earned money instead of funding someone else's lies. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. Demanding honesty isn't selfish. Protecting yourself isn't betraying family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling someone's destructive behavior, even if they're family. Especially if they're family. My name is Madison Cooper, and I survived family financial abuse. If my story helps even one person recognize the warning signs I missed, if it gives someone the courage to say no to manipulation disguised as family loyalty, then every difficult moment of breaking free was worth it. Your real family, the people who truly love you, will understand when you choose your well-being over their comfort. And the people who don't understand, well, that tells you everything you need to know about what kind of family they really are.